the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Sabzu, the radar radio star, here with you for a little book review that I like to do for patrons only. In fact, before I talk about the book, before we break down into this, and it won't be a very long episode because honestly, it's a very short book, and it's one of the first times that I can think of where we're going to do a book review where I'm going to tell you, it's negative. I was not impressed. But anyway, before I get into that, speaking of patrons, and I'll mention this on the Wednesday Q&A as well, you may notice that on the Patreon page, there have been some changes, and there's going to be some more coming. Nothing so dramatic as what I changed today, but just so you know. So there's some, the reward goals have kind of changed on it, or not the reward goals. The goals, yeah, I guess they're reward goals. Those have changed on the page. And also, I've now created a tier system that you can look at when you go to the Patreon page. In fact, one of those tiers is kind of relevant to what I'm doing with this book. Not that it was an idea given to me by the book. It was actually an idea given to me by someone that I'd more recommend listening to compared to this book, but I'll talk about that later. But one of them is a $100 tier on Patreon, which will net you a 1-hour private conversation with the Golden Stallion, with me. Okay, and we can talk about whatever the hell you want to talk about on that. I could do tech consulting for you. I could do, again, it can only be 1 hour though. It's a hard limit, 1 hour. So you'd want to keep it, into that. But I could do tech consulting. Hell, we could talk about gaming. We could talk about history, science. We could talk matters of love. We could talk, whatever, or science. I mean, you can get it kind of, it's your own personal little AMA with me, basically. And if it's like consulting of some kind, it can be that too. So that is one that's available, and then there's a couple other tiers there that you can look into. So anyway, but enough of that. I want to, like I said, I don't want this to be terribly long because there's not necessarily a whole lot to say about it. The book that I am recommending, or not that I'm recommending, actually, I'm not recommending it. The book that we are talking about here is The $1 Million One-Person Business. That's the main title. Subtitle is Make Great Money, Work the Way You Like, Have the Life You Want. And it's by Elaine Pofeldt, who this book just came out this year, like January 2018. This is very fresh and obviously an entrepreneurial book. And entrepreneurial books, sometimes some of them can be pretty evergreen. Others are a product of their time. This is one that will not be evergreen at all. This is definitely a product of its time. It's something that would need a refresh and to, it would need to get updated probably pretty frequently. Now, the title itself, the $1 million one-person business. My number one problem with this book, again, the title seems pretty self-explanatory, right? That this is about how you can get entrepreneurial, you can start a business and get rocking. You and you alone. Okay, that's what the title would suggest to you. And you'll get to, live maybe a digital nomad life or something like that, which I know a lot of my listeners are what one would technically call a digital nomad. And I think that's wonderful, if you're into that. So that's what the title would suggest. Here's the thing. I'm just going to break right into it. Okay. First off, it's very clear that this book is really just based upon a collection of like blog posts and other things. And I'm not saying that there's something necessarily wrong with that. Okay. But it's just a bunch of but it really feels like just a bunch of stories and examples of people that have kind of started the entrepreneurial process and have become quote unquote successful with it. Again, nothing necessarily wrong with that, but the title is suggesting this is a how-to guide. There's really only about a chapter or two, and it's the longest chapter within it. And this book isn't even 200 pages. It's a very short book. Nothing wrong with it being a very short book, but it's a very short book. And it... there's, like I say, there's only about one chapter that even describes really what to do with that. The thing is that what this book recommends doing, you're getting the idea from the title of the book that it's a one-person business. No, almost no one of the examples given of quote-unquote successful people, and I put that in quotes, in this book is really a one-person business. Nor did they ever really start as a one-person business. And what I mean by that is that she's like recommending using TaskRabbit, using a co-packer, using a lot of other companies, okay, that have a shit ton of employees. So really, you're not actually, I mean, the gist of it felt like you're not actually a business, you're a client to a lot of these bigger businesses that have a shit ton of employees. So you're not really a one-person business. Like, so for example, okay, with Sovryn Tech, I feel like, or here's another example, Zomia Offline Games. Let's talk about Zomia Offline Games. Zomia Offline Games is a one-person business, okay? And what I mean by that is that I make my games, I develop them myself, I do everything myself for Zomia Offline Games, everything. In the future, I might have other people involved with Sovryn Tech help out with it, but bottom line being, it is a one-person business. I buy software. That software does all the work for me, or not all the work for me. Obviously, I do the coding, but I mean, it's my platform within which I do that. I schlep it off to, I upload it to a website that is like itch.io, that, you can go to zog.itch.io and buy my games. And then that makes everything available. Now, I mean, effectively, but that's the thing. That's a one-person business. I'm doing all the work. I'm putting it out there. There's a platform that effectively allows it to sell and go out there. But no one, like, the platform's been developed. It's not like I'm hiring a bunch of people to schlep out my game. Not really. Okay, you could say, well, there's, itch.io might have 20 people working for it. Yeah, sure. But I mean, that's just the platform. I could still really just sell my product, singly because of its digital nature, and I could make that happen. This is the thing. This book is really telling you that you are just going to hire out. Okay, you're going to subcontract a bunch of people. You're not really a one-person business with this book. And so I think the title is wholly misleading. And frankly, it's disappointing. I mean, like, and there are almost no examples of how to even really start what you're doing. It's more or less saying, okay, learn your process, kind of master the craft that you want to get into and learn about it, and then do it in between, make it your side hustle and do it in between, the regular job necessarily that you're working. I mean, it didn't even it could have spent a ton of time. Like, another thing that can be a one-person business is, ironically, exactly what this woman did, where she wrote a book. She was an author. And, an author is a great way to be a one-person business. In fact, that's the classic, really, one-person business in a very real way. I mean, yes, it goes off to the printers and all that, and it gets shipped out and whatever, but you really have ultimate control of how all that, sort of functions. Again, this book is terribly misleading, and there aren't really, it's funny because I read the reviews and everybody's like, oh, there's so much actionable stuff in this. What the hell are you talking about? Like, there's nothing there's very little that's actionable within it. I mean, pretty much it just tells you to, okay, make your product, find a co-packer, get hire TaskRabbit to do this for you, and get a virtual, or I don't know. It didn't recommend Fiverr, thankfully, but it was kind of like, hire an assistant or whatever. I mean, and all this, and it felt very much like the 4-Hour Work Week, which I think Tim Ferriss is annoying as fuck. Like, I really, really do. At least with the 4-Hour Work Week, Tim Ferriss isn't making you believe that you're starting a one-person business where it's one person that does it all. I mean, that's what I wanted out of this book, was you tell me how I can, on my own, where I'm not worrying about, because I have some issues with services like TaskRabbit and so on. I have, it doesn't appeal to my market sensibilities whatsoever, okay? I was hoping to find a book where it was going to tell me, use this software, put it all together, and this is the business that you can kind of create out of that, right? Like, it talked about, and I mean, it mentioned within the book, that it was going to talk about podcasting, and I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. Like, how can I turn Sovryn Tech into $1 million, podcast business effectively? And no, it does it the other way around, where it's saying, no. You start a business and then you make a podcast about your business to sell it off. It wasn't like, this is how you make $1 million podcast. Now, that would have been a far more interesting book. Now, I mean, I can't necessarily expect her to have broken that down, but I mean, 200 pages could have put a lot of that together. But again, 3/4 of the book is just quote unquote success stories from other people. And there's not even a whole lot to glean or learn from that. I mean, it pretty much says, oh, well, they had this much time. And so they allotted this much time to doing it. I mean, I guess for some people that can be very helpful, but it's more or less just like an overview. I don't even want to call it an introduction, because an introduction would give you some tips at least. And I didn't feel this gave any tips, but it's more or less an overview of what I think is a very real paradigm shift in what the workforce is going to look like. Because I mean, that's part of the problem here. That's part of my disappointment, is that I think the one-person business is going to be a very real thing, and it'll be literally a one-person business, not a one-person business that hires 100 people from TaskRabbit, but a genuinely one-person business, and everything outside of it is really automated and not by other humans, where you're literally, yes, you are one person doing the job, okay, and handling, a whole bunch of other, aspects of it. I mean, and you could say, well, yeah, but I mean, shipping, if you have a physical product that you're selling, you could ship stuff out, and you're going to be using, USP, the Postal Service or UPS or FedEx or something, for that. And yeah, I get your point, and in that way you're kind of subcontracting in a very real way, but really that's how that infrastructure works and how it's always worked. As to where, things like TaskRabbit and some others, I mean, that's very new blood, and again, I feel that this book just did not live up to the title whatsoever. Now, granted, the title didn't say how to start necessarily the $1 million business. The title is the $1 million one-person business, almost like it's describing it. And I guess in that sense that's what it does, but who the hell would read that? What's the point? I mean, it's in its description, it's definitely, schlepping itself off as a guide, saying that, this is how you start this whole thing. But again, it's not really the one-person business, right? And you could say, you can get all Leonard Reed on me and say, oh, I pencil, right? And, what it takes to make a pencil and how there's always a bunch of people work for you. But I mean, really, you are having employees. It is not a guide on how to be like a one-person business. Okay, which, again, like I said earlier, I think that is going to become a very real thing as a lot of things become automated, okay? Creativity, art, and all of that. That's like the thing. I mean, yes, it can get automated. In fact, it can be done algorithmically. In fact, I was at the, this is when I was in France, when I was just recently, when I was in Paris, when I was at the Atelier des Lumières, Lumière, sorry, I know how to speak French. When I was there, they had an entire, before, in between playing stuff, or, having an exhibit about Gustav Klimt, they had one that was called Poetic AI, and it was all done by this algorithm, and it was beautiful. It was kind of like you're in the Matrix, but it was really, really beautiful. So, creativity can certainly be done by algorithms and AI, and quote unquote AI. I don't mean AGI, but just regular AI as well. But that's going to be like one of the major areas where humanity, is still going to, well, it's where you can genuinely be a one-person business. I mean, maybe this is, reading this book, maybe I should just write the book about how to be like a one-person entertainment empire effectively, even though then, I still, Stephanie helps out, and others help out as far as that goes. But yeah, I don't know. So market opportunity, right? Well, why don't you write the book that you're looking for? I mean, I kind of don't have to. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, the idea of like the $100 tier for Patreon and all that. Actually, Jake DeSillis of the Voluntary Life podcast, he told me how to go about that. Now, the Voluntary Life podcast, and actually Jake's books like Job Free and some of his other books that he's come out with, now those are the kind of guides that you want to rock. Okay, and I'm not just pushing this out there. I mean, Jake's a friend, and I'm not, just pushing it out. This isn't an ad for his books, okay? But bottom line being is that his books really tell you how to go, from nothing to having your own kind of business and all that. But then, of course, he also probably wouldn't make the claim of it being a one-person business, though he would certainly tell you how, or he would tell you how to do that as well. So yeah, again, this book feels like really false marketing, even though I think that it's very possible to do a genuine one-person business that does $1 million. Now, all right, I'll give the book a little bit of credit because it does tell you that, okay, yeah, it might be $1 million business, but after costs and all that, like that's what you'll net. But as far as like what you'll actually bring home, it'll probably be still a nice 6 figures, but you're not going to be making literally, you're not going to have in your pocket, as it were, $1 million, a year or something. I'm glad that they at least admitted that, because that's a problem where there's a lot of entrepreneurial podcasts, not The Voluntary Life, but there's other ones out there where they tell you, oh yeah, you can make $2 million a year, blah, blah, blah. But they don't tell you that to make $2 million a year, you literally paid out $1.5 million in advertising, right? So you're not really making $2 million. I mean, you are making $2 million a year, and that's great, but $1.5 million of that is going to like propping up your ability to make 100,000 or 200,000, which is great money. But I'm just saying, like, get past the hype, get past the marketing on a lot of this. And that's another thing that this book, is I guess part of the other disappointment is that it's not telling you, there's no point within it where it's telling you, okay, you have, kind of like The Rock or something, right? Where, you have $7 to your name. How are you going to make all that money? And you only have $7. This pretty tacitly, explains, okay, this person started off with $50,000 or $60,000. And it's like, okay, that's great, but you're not really telling me how to start from the beginning, like, all right, how do I really go from, how do I go from 0 to 1, right? How do I go from, nothing to making $1 million a year? This is not the book for that either. So overall, I'm like I said, this wasn't going to be a long episode. Overall, this is just a very disappointing book. I will link to it in the show notes. I don't recommend reading it for a second. I think the ebook version of it is available on torrent sites. The audiobook version was not. I did listen to the audiobook. The audiobook I actually do not give good reviews to. In fact, this is the first book that I've ever actually written out a review for. Fully, or the first book that I can think of where I've fully written out a review, and I just said, it's buyer beware. This book is not what you're looking for. It is a very general overview. It is not a guide whatsoever, to this concept. Maybe I should have plugged Jake's book in that, but regardless, the audiobook anyway was read by the author. And she does an okay job, but there's points where editing fucked up. And look, I know how this works. I mean, first off, I'm in love with the voice actor she does this stuff all the time. And also I've done editing for audiobooks. I mean, I do audiobooks for the patrons here. And yeah, I was just, again, very disappointed in this book. It does not live up to the title whatsoever. It's very basic. And it's, as far as if you do want to listen to the audiobook, it's only a 4-hour audiobook. I mean, I listen to it in an afternoon, because I listen to things at 2.25x speed. And so, I listen to it very quickly, but I cannot recommend this book. Stay away from it. The concept, I do recommend, the concept of being $1 million one-person business. Fuck yes. I think that's totally possible. I think it's a laudable goal. I think it's a wonderful thing. This book is not your guide to how to do that. All right. And maybe you need to create the guide, because it's, I don't know, a lot of things in life are right place, right time, and also I think if you're looking to make a really long-term play, there are, no, you know what? Bottom line, I need to write that book, I think. But I haven't made $1 million with one person business. I mean, I'm trying like hell, to make some kind of money with this. But I'm tempted to, I have other books that have to come out first, but I'm tempted to write a book on how to create a successful podcast. Because at the very least, I can say that by some metrics. This show doesn't make a lot of money, and I'm trying to get it to make a lot more. But certainly I have a large audience that any podcast would be happy to have. So I can certainly speak to success from that direction. This, that's something. This book, so here's pretty much a rule in almost in the entertainment business in general, but let's say for podcasting, all right, specifically in podcasting, let's do that. You can only get 1% of your audience to really jump on what you're selling. Okay. If you're selling something as a podcast, and you don't have to, I didn't for the longest time. Okay, you can only get about 1% of my audience approximately are patrons. Only 1%. That means out of 1,500 people, or I'm sorry, 15,000 people, there's only 100 patrons. I mean, so you could say, well, great, 15,000 listeners, that's awesome. But you can only get, 1% of that to, buy into what you're putting out there. And I genuinely like to think I'm providing serious value. In fact, I'm shocked. This book, to buy it on Amazon, either the audiobook or the ebook, is $15. And it's not even 200 pages. The Sovryn Universe Volume 1 is almost as long as this book. And I only sell that for $2.99. I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm going, because that's kind of the feedback I've gotten in the past with a lot of games and everything. Oh, no, well, if it's short, you can't sell this thing for $9.99. You can't sell it for, and I'm like, okay, fine, I won't sell it for that. But then, you got plenty of these people that sell this stuff for, that's crazy that this is a $15 book or $12 book or something. It absolutely is not worth that. So there you go. I don't recommend the $1 Million One Person Business by Elaine Pofeldt. Apparently she has a website that's very popular. I don't know. You can check that out, I suppose, because as I understand it, and it really feels like a lot of the content in this book is just there for free anyway. So do that if you really want to. And it was so annoying. It's all success stories. It's no, shut up. Just tell me, okay, how to do it. That's what I'm here for. Don't pad it. And I wonder how much this person, is she a millionaire? Does she have any idea? I mean, maybe she is. I don't think so. I don't think there's any claim. She doesn't, she should be telling me her success story, right? Of how she made the $1 Million One Person Business. I mean, you can be an analyst looking at it from the outside, kind of like a journalist reporting on an industry. But really, if I want to believe that you know how to do it, I want you to tell me how you did it. I mean, that's the thing. Jake, Jake DeSillis of the Voluntary Life, he's a successful guy. He's a genuine success. Is he worth listening to on how to do business and, how to handle finances and things like that? Well, fuck yes, because the man's done it. He's legit. So it annoyed me. It annoyed the hell out of me after I was willing to put in the time into it because honestly, it wasn't a ton of time to put in, to listen to the book. It was less than a couple hours. But I was just so disappointed and really don't bother with this book, but do bother with the concept. If you want to, get entrepreneurial and, start your own mini business, and look, it doesn't just have to be one person. I mean, Sovryn Tech is kind of getting to the point where it's more than one person that's involved in it. There's co-hosts and so on. And yeah, I mean, it's okay to have more than one person, but I think it's pretty cool. The whole, abstract concept of just being one person business, for lack of a better phrase, a one person army, as it were. I love that, that kind of, I don't love the idea of an army, but you get my point. I love that kind of concept. So anyway, give it a shot, but don't read this book to do it. Okay. If you are looking to get into, real entrepreneurial pursuits, this is not the book for you. Okay. At all. So I do not recommend it. If I was going to give it a 1 out of 10 rating, I'd give it a 1. I'd give it a 1 easily because I think it's not what it markets itself as, which is scary in itself, Well, I mean, I guess maybe the one thing she might know is a little bit of marketing because she got me to get the book, just by how she was, pushing it out there. But fuck, there's it's all book by its cover, and because there's nothing inside. So there you go. Anyway, that's it. My little review of the $1 Million One Person Business, a very disappointing book. And I will wrap this up. Like I said, it was going to be a very short episode. Of course, plenty more to come out through September 2018. I will see all of you on the other side.